Right. It was suggested in the comments on one of our videos by one of our lovely subscribers that we should do a series looking at teams starting 11 10 years ago and their starting 11 now, comparing the two sides and the players in each position. I thought I'd taken a screenshot of the comment, but it would appear that I was wrong and I now can't find it. So whoever you are and wherever you are, thanks for your suggestion, and today we're going to give it a bash. I've added a slight extra element, which is to put together a combined 11, so as we go through the positions, we will pick who we feel is the best player in each position between then and now. Manchester United were in a very different position 10 years ago to the one they are in now, approaching the final straight of a season which saw them win the Premier League, the League Cup, the Club World Cup and the Community Shield, as well as reaching an FA Cup semi-final and a Champions League final. Now, in 2018-19, the club are under the temporary charge of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They've been knocked out of both domestic cup competitions and are facing a fight to finish in the top 4 of the Premier League. But they have progressed to the quarter-finals of the Champions League, albeit they'll have to pull off a masterstroke to see off Barcelona. Here is Manchester United in 2009 versus 2019, our combined 11. Goalkeeper: Edwin van der Sar versus David de Gea. One could argue, indeed I would argue, that this is the position with both the tightest challenge and the most quality between the two players in this entire 11. Both players, if not already then at least once De Gea has retired, will go down as being among the top 20 to 25 greatest players in the history of their position, if not higher. This was Edwin van der Sar's third to last season in football before retiring in 2011, but one could argue that he was at the peak of his powers. He may have been powerless to prevent Lionel Messi from beating him with a looping header in the Champions League final, but Van der Sar's all-round game was formidable, regularly defying the odds and saving the ball with his agile but lanky 6'5" frame. Up against him though, and United's current number 1 is probably the best goalkeeper in world football right now. David de Gea has been named as Manchester United's player of the season more times than any other individual in history. He has routinely inspired them to victory or saved them from humiliation, and he hasn't had nearly as impressive a backline in front of him as Van der Sar had. So in a tough battle for our number 1 shirt, we're just about going for De Gea. Left back: Patrice Evra versus Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw is a very accomplished left back who is now an important player for Manchester United, with his days at Old Trafford having looked numbered at one stage under Jose Mourinho. If it wasn't for his horrible injury back in 2015, one can only imagine the level Shaw may be at now, but he is still only 23. Patrice Evra was a sensational servant to Manchester United though, racking up close to 400 appearances over 9 seasons, thrice making the PFA Team of the Year. What's more, in 2009, the year in question here, the Frenchman made FIFA's FIFA Pro World 11 and he was probably at the peak of his powers. This one is surely a bit of a no-brainer then, and Evra takes it for us. Centre back: Nemanja Vidic versus Victor Lindelof. Following a tricky start to life at Manchester United, it has to be said that Victor Lindelof's transformation into the club's most assured centre back and potential captain material is really quite impressive. He'll have to go a hell of a long way further than that to dislodge Nemanja Matic from this side though. Vidic is a United legend, and he was quite simply incredible during the 2008-09 season. So physically dominant at that time, Vidic made 55 appearances for the club, chipped in with 7 goals, was named as both the club's player and players' player of the year, and joined Patrice Evra in the FIFA Pro World 11. He walks into our starting 11. Centre back: Rio Ferdinand versus Chris Smalling. With all due respect to Chris Smalling, and I mean that, even though I do think he has looked a little out of his depth at times at Manchester United, this was the easiest decision in our entire 11. Rio Ferdinand is one of the finest centre-backs in the history of the British game, and his centre-back partnership with Nemanja Vidic was the perfect blend of silk and steel. Ferdinand was assured, composed, positionally excellent, and comfortable on the ball. He spent 12 seasons at Old Trafford, where he played more than 450 games, and as the greatest centre-back in Manchester United history, Chris Smalling doesn't really give him too much of a challenge for a place in our starting 11. Right back: John O'Shea versus Ashley Young. Now, I should point out at this stage, since I suspect many of you may have been expecting Gary Neville to feature here, that we are going for the 2 players that have played the most games in their respective positions in their respective seasons. Now, Wes Brown, John O'Shea, Gary Neville and Raphael all played games at right back for Manchester United in the 2008-09 campaign, but O'Shea played by far the most, racking up 54 appearances. Challenging him is Ashley Young, who is incredibly now in his 8th season at Old Trafford, a time span which has seen him go from a flying left winger to left back and now right back. Young has often impressed as a makeshift fullback, and this was the closest call of our back four, but we're still going with the specialist in the form of O'Shea, who was very dependable on his day, and this was by far the best season of his career. Central midfield, Michael Carrick versus Nemanja Matic. One of the other problems that this type of video presents is picking a formation that fits both the current team and the one from 10 years ago, and in this case, that's a 4-3-3, and at the base of our 3-man midfield, it's a choice between Nemanja Matic and Michael Carrick. We should also point out that Carrick made 13 more appearances than Paul Scholes that season, for anyone wondering about the red-haired Englishman's omission. Matic has done a steady job at United and has enjoyed success elsewhere, but I feel pretty sure I'd take what is essentially prime Michael Carrick over a current Nemanja Matic. Carrick was sometimes overlooked in terms of his contribution at Old Trafford, perhaps down to the extraordinary talent playing in and around him, but he showed at Tottenham what a special player he was, and his service to the Red Devils was superb. Central midfield, Ji-Sung Park versus Ander Herrera. Just in front of Carrick, this was a nasty decision to have to make. Both Ji-Sung Park and Ander Herrera are very committed characters who put in a great shift and bring out the best in those around them. Herrera is probably the more accomplished passer of the ball, but Park probably the better in possession. This one's likely to divide opinion, but whenever Fergie seemed to have a tough choice between Park and someone else for a big game, he'd go with the Korean, so we're going to do likewise. With a fantastic engine, attitude and big game pedigree, Park takes his place in the centre of our midfield. Central midfield, Darren Fletcher versus Paul Pogba. I should point out once again that all three of Carrick, Park and Fletcher played more games for Manchester United during the 2008-09 campaign than the likes of Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs and Anderson. Darren Fletcher was at his best between 2008 and 2010, and it was around this time that a lot of people started to appreciate what he brought to United's starting 11 and stopped suspecting that he was just in the team because he was Scottish. Ultimately though, the man sometimes mocked for being Fergie's teacher's pet never had the raw ability that Pogba possesses. The 2018 World Cup winner may have had a mixed return to Old Trafford, but he is a sensational talent at his best, so he becomes the second class of 19 player to make our starting 11. Left wing, Carlos Tevez versus Marcus Rashford. Now, Manchester United's front three during the 2008-09 season tended to interchange a lot, but I went to great lengths to try and make sure each one was in their rightful place here. Likewise, Marcus Rashford has at times played through the middle this season with Romelu Lukaku out wide, but he's still played the majority of his football on the left flank. Rashford is a very exciting talent who has looked brilliant under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but Carlos Tevez was just thrilling for Manchester United. Wayne Rooney said he preferred playing alongside Tevez even over the likes of Ruud van Nistelrooy and Robin van Persie, and it's easy to see why. Tevez was relentless in his running, he never gave defenders a moment's rest, he was unselfish in his forward play, and he chipped in with 15 goals primarily from wide areas during the 08-09 campaign. We're big fans of yours, Marcus, but we think even you'd admit it has to be Tevez here. As if he's watching. Right wing, Cristiano Ronaldo versus Jesse Lingard. Once again, we like Jesse Lingard, but no one from Manchester United's current crop really stands a chance up against one of the Red Devils' greatest ever players. He might not have spent that long at Manchester United, but boy did Cristiano Ronaldo make quite the impression. This was the Portuguese superstar's last season at Old Trafford, and although he wasn't quite as devastating in front of goal as he had been in the previous campaign, he was still the best player in the Premier League. 10 years on, he's now cemented his place as one of the greatest players in the history of the game, and he'd naturally be the first name on our team sheet. Centre forward, Wayne Rooney versus Romelu Lukaku. Manchester United's front three of Tevez, Ronaldo and Rooney was always going to take some beating, and it's fair to say Rashford, Lingard and Lukaku are still some way off that level right now. Rooney often sacrificed himself when Tevez and Ronaldo were at the peak of their powers, doing a lot of the dirty work and often drifting out onto the flanks, and it's no surprise that he scored 34 goals instead of 20 the season after this one when both those players left the club. I can think of few footballers who contrast opinion in terms of their ability as much as Rooney, but anyone who doubts that he was one of the best forwards in the world at his best is off their head. I have long maintained that with the same diet and discipline as Ronaldo, Rooney could have had the same career. But even still, he goes down as England and Manchester United's all-time top scorer and a sure starter in our combined 11. The team. To conclude, our combined Manchester United 2009 versus Manchester United 2019 starting 11 looks like this. David De Gea, PATRICE EVRA, Nemanja Vidic, Rio Ferdinand, John O'Shea, Michael Carrick, Park Ji-sung, Paul Pogba, Carlos Tevez, Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. Essentially, the 2008-09 team plus De Gea and Pogba, but that should come as no surprise given the relative standings and levels of the two teams and the stages they were at. This was the first video of this type that we have done, but if it gets a lot of interest, we'd be happy to do others, so please do feel free to let us know in the comments which clubs you'd like to see us do this kind of video for. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and go ahead and subscribe to HITC Sevens, turn on notifications, and even give us a follow on Twitter if you're a fan of the channel.